Good day and peaceful sky. On December 18, many different opinions about peace, the Minsk agreements and negotiations were discussed on the sidelines. Backstage rumors. There were rumors on the sidelines that the armed forces of Ukraine had a shortage of winter equipment. No matter how the management reports that everything is fine, in reality everything is not so rosy. One of the problems is rapid wear and tear. When a soldier gets to the front line, he has to be in the same uniform for weeks. No one gives out a spare kit. This leads to wear and tear and in fact the unsuitability of the form. There are enough such problems in the armed forces of Ukraine. Now everyone has started talking about the shortage of ammunition, but in the spring Ukraine will face a shortage of heavy weapons. Opinion. Why Zelensky needs Crimea and the denuclearization of Russia. After 2 military adventures, Poroshenko was forced to sign Minsk-2. However, all adequate people understood that Poroshenko would not fulfill it. He made the most of his time. At the same time, Ukraine retained the vast majority of trade and economic ties with the Russian Federation, although some of it went into the shadows. Banks worked, ammonia was supplied, Donbass coal heated the houses of Ukrainians through Rotterdam plus, Medvedchuk's channels broadcast on Ukrainian air, and Ukrainian details went through the UAE for Russian helicopters, etc. Everything went on as usual. People got married, divorced, gave birth, slowly left, but it seemed like it was normal. By choosing Zelensky, people expected him to change all that and make it even easier. However, everything happened exactly the opposite. Now, after 10 months of war, hundreds of thousands of dead, millions of refugees, a destroyed economy, Zelensky simply cannot accept peace, on the borders of February 23, which the West is imposing. Because such a world is much worse than Poroshenko's, even taking into account the implementation of Minsk-2. It is obvious. It would turn out that Zelensky went to the polls with peaceful rhetoric, but also lost territories, because in Minsk-2 LPR and DPR, Ukraine, and now definitely not, and allowed a big war, Zelensky watches how the country is being destroyed, striving achieve access at least to the borders that Poroshenko provided and kept by only one demonstration of the desire to fulfill Minsk-2. Many understand that Zelensky is not at war with the Russian Federation, Putin, Russians. He is at war with yesterday for a missed chance for peace on better terms than Minsk-2. It's impossible, you say. It's impossible to turn the minced meat back, ! So it is. That is why Vladimir Alexandrovich continues the war and denies negotiations. Unloved Minsk. Today everyone likes to criticize the Minsk agreements. Strelkov, Poroshenko, Merkel, everyone considers them something very bad. Everyone has their own arguments. However, if you look at them from the point of view of the real results of the war, the picture is as follows. Let us briefly list what the actors would have if Minsk had been completed. Ukraine. No big war. No thousands of deaths. No ruined economy. No millions of refugees. Plus the territory of the LDNR. RF. No big war. No thousands of deaths. No heavy sanctions. No expenses for the LDNR, 2 regions and the war. Federalization of Ukraine, not in NATO. Finland and Sweden are not in NATO. Lack of hatred for millions of Ukrainians and sympathizers. EU. No spending on millions of refugees. Cheap energy resources. Profitable Russian market. After almost 10 months of a big war, it is clear that the implemented Minsk-2 would be a win-win-win output for the EU, Russia and Ukraine, but not for the USA, Britain and Turkey. And now we remember who are Zelensky's best friends? You can think like the majority and scold peaceful compromise solutions, but you can also think a little wider. Gossip. The source reports that many functionaries of the office of the president are afraid that a huge corruption scandal may surface in the future when the data of the accounts of Zelensky's entourage from the FTX exchange get into the press. When someone raises the history of transactions and the circulation of money, as well as where and to whom they left after, a hint at the lobby group from the Democratic Party and other important people. The source advises those who were in this scheme to save their lives, as they could be taken out of the game. This is the new daddy of the offshore scandal that the Americans will have, and when it is needed, it can accidentally get into the media. Opinion. If humanity needed to find someone to negotiate with aliens, I would send Zelensky. He would shower them with narratives. In terms of the number of little useful, but sonorous narratives, few people on the planet can compete with the office team. Our brains are crammed with the narratives of the 95th quarter, grain from Ukraine, the Crimean platform, points of Nesmelnosti and so on. Now Zelensky is proposing a global formula for peace, a powerful name. We are ready to create a mechanism to achieve world peace, President of Ukraine. Sounds loud and strong. In fact, the West is pressing again. It is important for Zelensky to demonstrate movement towards peace. Therefore, the office technologists suggested using the World Cup final to promote yet another high-profile initiative. The whole speech of Zelensky is saturated with the word peace and peacefulness, just the Dalai Lama. Where is the victory on the battlefield? Where is the denuclearization of Russia? Don't worry, everything will return if necessary. It's just that for now the task is to demonstrate peaceful initiatives, otherwise the West began to really get tired of the aggressive rhetoric of the Ukrainian authorities. Opinion. Today, for the first time in the world, a new type of human control has been introduced. The European Union has introduced a personal carbon account system. Every citizen will have to start paying for their carbon emissions in order to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030. The air tax is just around the corner. Inside, the search for collaborators has been significantly expanded and strengthened. Under this sauce, personal scores are settled and business is squeezed out in the Kherson and Kharkiv regions. Tariffs are being raised to throw off a person from criminal cases for collaborationism. Arrests are even made for correspondence with relatives. The SBU must collect an exchange fund, and this is about 4,000 people. Opinion. The Western media continue to report on the mixed feelings in Kherson a month after the release. After Sky News, a similar text was released by the French Le Monde. The introduction to the article notes, with the help of propaganda based on nostalgia for the USSR and the payment of generous old age pensions, the Russian occupation authorities were able to find support among disadvantaged social strata of the population. The correspondent of the publication describes the colossal life problems of those people who are still in the city: interruptions in electricity, water, heat, constant shelling. In addition, there continues to be a split between those who support different sides of the conflict. Although many of those who were loyal to the Russians left the city, many still remained. As one of the interlocutors of Le Monde, who takes a pro-Ukrainian position, notes, the main reason for the cooperation of Kherson residents with the Russian authorities was not persuasion, but purely practical things. For example, people stood in queues for Russian passports because of the desire to get a Russian pension, which is significantly higher than the Ukrainian one. Le Monde's interlocutor herself is jarred by such sausage principles. She refused to work as a teacher at the school, although she was offered a good salary. A French journalist quotes local residents, for example, 60-year-old Svetlana, who is unhappy with the current situation. These Ukrainian soldiers are no good, they do not help us, they only expose us to shells. She also says that under the Russians, she could calmly walk around the city, and humanitarian aid was also brought. Among the pro-Russian people there are those who are very saddened by the hasty departure of the Russian army. They feel abandoned, although they promise to protect to the last. See you later. Take care of yourself.